Hello friends, I'm going to talk about some inexpensive records, otherwise known as cheap heat. And in the past I've talked exclusively about old music, like from the 70s and 80s, occasionally venturing in the 90s. This edition of Cheap Heat is going to be all about music from the 21st century. Most of these albums are like 10 years old. Some of them are amazingly good. Some of them are super obscure. Some of them are going to be harder to get if you're in the US than in Europe. But they're all cheap. They're all, you know, not including postage, less than 20 bucks. I've checked into this. I had to eliminate several. Anyway, hope you enjoy these selections. The music is more eclectic in this edition than in others. I do listen to a wide variety of stuff. But I've tried to keep this in the 21st century. So, without further ado, what are we listening to now? Listening to Clones and False Prophets, an album by an artist named Badawi. His real name is Raz Messenai, I think. Yes, Rav Messenai. And this is kind of a cool record. It's largely electronic, but it's got significant contributions from a lot of artists associated with John Zorn. In fact, John Zorn's thanked in the credits. It's got Ben Prowski on drums, Shahzad Ismaili on bass on a few tracks. Mark Ribot is on it. Doug Weiselman is on it. It's a really cool record. You'll be hearing it in the background the whole time. Kind of a Middle Eastern instrumental, sample-rich, sequencer-rich kind of a thing, but it's not dance music. It's kind of dark. Actually, I really like this record. All right, moving on. The next one I want to talk about is, I think it's a one-off thing. And it's by a group called Stiffwiff from Portland, Oregon. And it's mostly, I don't even know how I heard about this record. It's mostly a bunch of indie rock guys, all really accomplished musicians. It's all instrumental, 2 side-long tracks, basically jams, sort of krautrocky sounding, sort of psychedelic space rocky sounding stuff. I've never heard of any of these guys before or since. I usually try to check out like other stuff they've done, and mostly these guys are indie rockers. But this record, which is dedicated to a musician who died at an early age up there in Portland, Oregon, which is where these guys are from. They really pull out all the stops on this. It's a really fine recording of some really excellent and highly listenable space rock jamming. I really like this record a lot. It comes with a free CDR of the whole thing and some inserts, and it can be had super cheap. Stiffwiff. It's from like 2010. Another artist that I got into via records that I've just been interested in over the years is this guy Andreas Soderstrom, and he goes by the acronym ASS. Sorry, but that is what it's called, which means Andreas Soderstrom Solo. And this record's called Saltmarsh. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the other selections I've chosen, but it's super great, and it involves some really heavy jazz dudes, but it's not really a jazz record. It's all instrumental, sort of post-rocky, but not too post-rocky. It's kind of like the kind of music you'd think about when you're riding your bike down a beautiful sun-dappled country lane. I'm serious. It's very acoustic, very listener-friendly, but not lightweight at all. It's just a really beautiful record. This is the only record I have by him. He has several others out, which are considerably more expensive, but I would check them out on the strength of this. This is a beautiful record. It's called Saltmarsh, and the name of the artist is ASS, A-S-S, Andreas Soderstrom Solo. He's a guitar player. Anyway, a bunch of really interesting people related to the Runa gramophone scene are the backing band on this. That's why I got into it. I love Runa Gramophone Records, one of my favorite labels. Another artist who's recorded like a lot of sort of folk acoustic guitar type stuff as a solo artist, but it's also done some really heavy stuff as well, is Sean Smith. He's a guitarist and composer based in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And this is an album called Huge Fluid Freedom. And I got this at the record show, Albuquerque Record Show. One of my friends there said, "You've got to check this record out, Dave. I listened to it and I thought of you. You're really going to dig it." And so I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And he was right. I really dig it. It's, again, sort of a post-rock kind of sound. If you like Six Organs of Admittance, Jim O'Rourke, people like that, you'll definitely be into this record. There's some solo guitar on it. There's some more band-oriented tracks. And I think it's just 3 or 4 very long tracks. And it has that sort of Dylan Carlson, Earth, sort of Pacific Northwest darkness to it. I like it quite a bit. It's really cool. And I want to check out some of Sean Smith's other music. He's recorded a lot of solo guitar records, and he's also in a couple of different bands. Anyway, sounds like a really interesting musician. And this record's called Huge Fluid Freedom. Anyway, beautiful gatefold jacket and everything, the whole package. Another really inexpensive record. It might be going up in price these days, is Trouble Man by Robert Aaron. And this comes with a 7-inch as well. I'm not going to show that. Well, I can show it, but it's still in the sleeve. And the CD has all the tracks on it. But this is on Heavenly Sweetness, really excellent label out of France. And this is just a beautiful record. It's sort of a Afro-Latin jazz record. They do a Pharoah Sanders track on this. They do a Marvin Gaye Trouble Man cover on this. It's sort of a Afro-Latin acoustic version of it. There are electric keyboards on this. I think it was recorded in the 70s, just based on the personnel. Sheikh Tidiane Seck on keyboards and saxophones, Mark Berteau on bass, Stephen McCraven, Micaiah McCraven's dad, on drums, Roger Raspel on percussion. It's just a really cool record. It doesn't give any story or evidence about its origins. Robert Aaron's recorded some really noisy, crazy stuff on his own in the early 80s. He was also somehow involved in the events that led up to the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman, I believe. I'm not sure how all that works. But this is a great record. It's beautiful, sort of mellow Afro-Latin jazz. I don't know how else to describe it. He plays saxophones and keyboards, and wrote all the tunes on this record except for the 2 I mentioned. Anyway, Trouble Man by Robert Aaron. Beautiful record. Now here's a record that's like an all-star thing, somewhat less obscure than the other records. And I'm not a fan of tribute records. I really don't like them. They're usually annoying to me. I'd rather just hear the real thing. But this record is an exception, a rare exception. This is a tribute to my favorite drummer, Tony Williams. Genius of the drums, genius composer, just a genius all around. And this is Cindy Blackman on drums, who's really the one drummer that's has really absorbed Tony Williams' style and then logically extended it. She is a phenomenal musician. So she's the drummer. Vernon Reid from Living Colour and Ronald Shannon Jackson's bands on guitar, Jack Bruce on bass, who is in the original Lifetime, and John Medeski on keyboards. Fantastic record. Really great selection of tunes on this from different aspects of Tony's career. Can't recommend this highly enough. The CD and the LP have the same tracks, so you don't have to feel cheated for getting the LP. This is really the pinnacle as far as tribute records are concerned. Spectrum Road, it really captures the excitement and the raw energy of the original band. I have a feeling that these guys would be doing this music, you know, regardless. Great record. Anyway, beautiful record. It's on Palmetto Records. Should be widely available here in the U.S. Getting back into some more obscure stuff. If you live in a big city, the chances are you'll be able to find some of these records much more easily. I live in the sticks in New Mexico. These things just don't turn up. But every once in a while I make a foray into a major metropolitan area, and they actually have things like bargain bins at the record stores there. And so I picked them up. The last time I was in the Bay Area, I picked up like a handful of these things, and they're all great. I don't think I paid much more than $3 or $4 a piece for them. And this is one of these records that I've never seen anywhere else, but it's still cheap on Discogs. It's by a group called Rocket Number 9 Zoom Zoom Up. That is their whole name, Rocket Number 9 Zoom Zoom Up. And it's a trio, guitar, bass, and drums. There's a lot of samples and synth trickery on this as well. And personnel, it's just 3 guys I've never heard of. But the reason why I got this, if you look at the back, I don't know if you can see this, but it's got a production credit for John McIntyre. And if you follow bands like Tortoise and Stereolab, 2 of my favorite bands, John McIntyre has worked with both of those bands. In fact, he is in Tortoise. And pretty much anything he produces or has anything to do with, I'm going to enjoy. So I bought this for $2, and it's fantastic. I love this record. It's sort of like the nexus of post-rock, jazz rock fusion, and krautrock. And it's like these guys listen deeply to all those styles and really put something together that's original and interesting and lasting. And it's 2021 now, so this record's about 10, 12 years old, but it's a keeper, man. I love this record. And there's no credits. There's just 3 guys listed on it: Monty Craig, Andy Nagel, and John Bice. And they're all in other bands. They all play with other artists. But Rocket Number 9 Zoom Zoom Up, that's the whole name of the band. Definitely look this up if you're into post-rock, krautrock, or jazz rock fusion. Another record I got at the time in the Bay Area from Amoeba Records, I have to say, is this Patrick Wolf record. And I think this cost $1 or maybe $2. Couldn't pass it up. This is a straight up acoustic jazz recording, but it's all original compositions, just 4 long tracks. That's always a plus in my opinion. And it's got a very dark, sort of nocturnal feel to it. I wouldn't call it spiritual jazz because that has a real sort of certain connotation, and I don't know if it really goes there for most people, but this is an excellent record. It's got some interesting people on it. Eric Jacobson on trumpet and flugelhorn. Patrick Wolf is a saxophonist, composed all of this stuff. Adam Schulman on piano. John Wittala on bass, and I know Wittala's name from his work with Jessica Jennifer Williams. I'm going to talk about her music in a future edition of this. And a drummer named Hamir Atwal is really fantastic. And another saxophone player, there's 2 saxophones on this, Andrew Zimmerman. Anyway, I just bought this because I knew Wittala was a great bass player. And I really like the jacket. Cover art is a big thing for me. And it really paid off in spades. This is called Noose of Light. And it's just a lovely, sort of dark, mysterious jazz record. All acoustic, no electronics. Can't recommend this one highly enough. And it's cheap on Discogs. I mentioned Stereolab a little while ago. I'm just going to cut to the chase here, because I'm going to talk about 2 groups if I have enough time. Anyway, this group, Imitation Electric Piano, they've done 2 records, and they're sort of related to Stereolab in terms of their sound and approach, and I think there's some personnel overlap. Anyway, they made this record, and it's on It's on Cranky and the label. And it's got great vintage keyboards on it. If you like Stereolab's more jazzy stuff, say from Dots and Loops, that era, you're really gonna like this. It's a great record. And it's one of those records, I can't believe how cheap it is. There's vocals on it, but the vocals are cool. The playing is wonderful. It's just a really cool, sort of progressive, krautrock informed, modern indie rock record that really makes a lot of references to jazz and the music we love. And if you like Stereolab, you gotta have this record. It's really quite a bit like Stereolab. So the name of the band's Imitation Electric Piano. Trinity Neon, I think, is the name of the album. All right, so I'm going to talk about two bands who've done a number of records that are great, and whose LPs you can get for pretty cheap these days. One group is this is sort of our personal connection here, the Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, and the main guy in that band, Brian Haas, used to live right down the street from me, and we've hung out some. And Brian's a really good dude. A lot of artistic integrity, a lot of hard work. I'm sure he's going to do some more Jacob Fred stuff, although he's completely into different stuff now. He's moved also. He doesn't live here in Santa Fe anymore. He's moved to New Orleans. Sorry to see him go, but totally understandable in the light of COVID, and there's no opportunities for anybody to play out anymore. Anyway, his band, the Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, started out as sort of a jam band, sort of electric piano bass, drums, sort of funky jazz thing, but it quickly veered away from that. And Brian got into some really interesting areas and worked with a number of really excellent musicians. And the Race Riot Suite, he brought all this to my attention, actually. I did not know about this, but this is dedicated to basically a slaughter of black people in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the early part of the 20th century. Horrific thing that happened there. And this is his musical impression of that. We had a long conversation about this record. And if you like Sun Ra or Ascension by John Coltrane, it's not as free as those records, but it's definitely heading in that direction. It's basically Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey, which at the time was Brian, Chris Combs, a wonderful guitar player, Josh Raymer, a fantastic drummer. Both those guys are from Tulsa, along with Brian, and Jeff Harshbarger on bass, and they added a horn section. Amazing people in this horn section: Peter Affelbaum, Steve Bernstein, Jeff Coffin, Matt Leland, and Mark Sutherland. So 5-man, amazing horn section. This is a killer record, and it's really unlike anything else Jacob Fred's done. And it's a very deep expression of anger, I think. Cut to the chase. Kind of a profound record. Can be had very inexpensively. Race Riot Suite. Now, like I said, the Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey explored a lot of different styles, and some of my favorite stuff has an almost post-rock sort of flavor to it. A lot of electronics, a lot of sort of spacious playing, not so much jazz, but more undefinable, really. And the two records that exemplify this approach are Stay Gold, this is a 2-record set, and Little Tay Rise Again. I have both the CD and the LP of both of these records. That's how much I like them. Really fantastic stuff, really unusual, not at all what you'd expect. And again, both of these are by sort of the core trio of Brian Haas on keyboards, Chris Combe on synthesizers and guitars, Josh Raymer, great drummer, and this one has a bass player on it, Matt Hayes, and this one has no bass player on it. It's just Combs, Haas, and Josh Raymer. And that's really a great trio. There's really a great chemistry there, and I hope those guys get back together. Chris Combs has his own band now, Combsy, with Josh Raymer on drums, and they're doing some great stuff. They've come through town here a couple of times and just given fantastic shows. Really enjoy those guys and their music. Last band I'm going to talk about, this is their entire discography, and I hope they're still together. I hope they're still making music. Fontenelle is their name, and they're from the Pacific Northwest. And if you're into the whole Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, Agartha, Dark Magus thing, you've got to check these guys out. And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of people who are into that kind of music these days, myself included. And I don't feel like people understand it all that well, but they think, oh, I'm just going to make some crazy jazz noise and call it an Electric Miles project. And it just doesn't work. These guys understand the music though, and they get it. And this album is a crowning achievement. It's called Vitamin F. It's on the Southern Lord record label, best known for mostly metal. But this album is fantastic. They really get the whole Miles Davis thing, and the compositions, the playing are fantastic. Not show-offy at all. Hard grooves, man, throughout. You've got to get this record if you're into the whole, I don't even want to call it fusion. It's really got kind of that Electric Miles dark, heavy atmosphere to it. Their previous records draw a little bit more heavily from the post-rock, krautrock realm, but they've definitely got some jazz sort of fusion sort of underpinnings or solos, and it's all the same guys. This one's called Fontenelle. This is their first one, I think. I could be wrong. This is on the Cranky label, and I really like that label a lot. This one, I think, is an EP. I don't even know what it's called. I think it's called F. It's on the Audra Glint record label. Again, the same guys. Rex Ritter, Paul Dicko, Matt Morgan, Michael Faith, Brian Foote. All these guys have been in the band from the get-go. They're somehow related to another post-rock band called Jessamine that I think broke up, and some of the guys went on and formed this band. And this is another record they did, also on Cranky. And this doesn't really have a title, but once again, it's a fantastic record. Sort of right in between, it's a favorite zone for me. Right in between the whole post-rock thing, which I really dig, Tortoise, that kind of thing, and Isotope 217, and then also got some jazz rock fusion things going on. Anyway, those are some pretty cheap records that you can get. They're from the 21st century. You don't have to be an old fart like me to get into it. You can be a young person and be hip. Lots of stuff out there. So I hope you get out there and find some of these records and enjoy the music. That's the main thing. Till next time.